Hi everyone. Today I'm going to be talking about combating obesity, specifically exercise in rural African American women ages 45 to 70. The WHO explains obesity as a chronic complex disease defined by excessive fat deposits that can impair health. Now, when looking at statistics, obesity is in over one-third of the adult American population, and out of that population, African Americans are among the highest at risk of obesity compared to white individuals. Specifically, when looking at sex, approximately 56.6% of African American women are obese, which is almost double the average percentage of obese American women. Now, why is this important to combat? This is because it not only has the physical consequences, like stated earlier, of heightened risk to other diseases like diabetes and hypertension, but it also affects mental health, like anxiety and depression. And how can we promote a healthy lifestyle? When looking at decreasing obesity in a population, it is important to look at the behaviors that contribute to it and how to promote a proper behavior. When looking at obesity, one might look into exercise and diet, but for this presentation, we're going to be focusing only on exercise. When looking at the focus population, this is going to be the target population of rural African American women ages 45 to 70, and this population is disproportionately studied compared to white people, and even though they have the highest percentage of um, obesity, they are just not studied. And when looking at barriers in a rural older Black women community, it is important to understand their demographic specific barriers. This can conclude lack of accessibility of safe locations and gym equipment due to their geographic location, decreased social support from family members, decreased social support from the community due to racism, and decreased ability to focus on themselves due to work and family responsibilities. Now, when looking at exercise, the Mayo Clinic explains it as a way to enhance and maintain fitness and overall health. Now, what is considered exercise? This can range from simple movements to intense intervals or programs. Now, how does exercise affect lifestyles? It can positively impact a lifestyle by giving a sense of community, providing a routine, decreasing risk of diseases, and having multiple immediate and long-term benefits. Now, when you're looking at why people don't exercise, mostly just because they're unaware of the consequences of not exercising, decreased knowledge on how to exercise, and low to no support from their peers on exercising. Next, we're going to look at behavioral factors. The first one is motivation. Many people struggle to have motivation, or if they do, it's not enough to produce a change in behavior. When looking at self-efficacy, many people in the Black community have low self-efficacy due to decreased support from their peers and community and lack of accessibility. This population is in a location that does not have easy transportation compared to urban areas, and the feeling of being in a close community is not as achievable when people live further away from each other. Now, for time, many people in this demographic have less in time due to having family obligations and working. It is seen that those who live in a rural area are more likely to have a lower income, causing those in this area to work longer hours and for more of their lifetime. For social support, like stated before, many people in rural areas have less in social support just due to the physical distance between them. There's less in self-service and their smartphones, so their primary source of communication is in person. However, since it is rural and people live farther away, it's just harder to have that social support through in-person communication. For mental health, women are at risk of major depression is over doubled compared to men, meaning that there's a decrease in motivation. For social determinants, first we're going to talk about transportation. There's lower transportation due to the rural location, causing the barrier to get to a gym and have the accessibility of equipment and exercise programs. When looking at accessibility and environment, there's a lowered accessibility to safe gyms and exercise locations, meaning lowered accessibility to gym equipment, kind of like I said for transportation. For racism, racism is present everywhere, unfortunately, and this causes a decrease in motivation or the ability to exercise safely and unjudged for the Black community. And for education, there is a decrease in focus of older rural Black women, causing a decrease in education on why physical activity is important. Next, we're going to talk about the ecological approach to exercise. When looking at the social ecological model, the first inner circle is I, which is individual. These are factors that are dependent on solely themselves These could be employment status, educational level, social economic status, and a lot of these variables and influences are pretty hard to change. So this, even though is the core, can be hard to change for someone. The next circle is family. This is direct family members, and the Black women have decreased financial and verbal support compared to those in the white community. For relational, this is having a partnership with someone outside of your family. This can include verbal support, social norms, and peer pressure. And the biggest part of this in terms of exercise and promoting exercise is that having someone to encourage exercise and do it with you is just like the backbone for heightened motivation. For community and peers, this is like social norms, mass media, social service. And for societal and cultural, this is social norms, values, attitudes. This is just those outside distal influences. And for Black women, they are less likely to have positive emotions towards exercise due to racism and decreased education. The next theory we're going to look at is the trans-theoretical model of change. Monahan dives into this by examining the trans-theoretical model for multiple variables, causing a decrease in exercise participation in the Black and Hispanic participants. This was completed through a cross-sectional survey with 450 Black and Hispanic adults. When it came to self-efficacy, there was an increase in both general self-efficacy and effective self-efficacy when moved through the stages of change, specifically from the pre-contemplation to action stage. This means that participants move towards the action stage of exercising, their belief on being able to handle barriers increases. This is important because it shows that when someone starts exercising regularly and making a habit of it, their ability to continue the behavior if a barrier is present is increased. Across the stages, family and work-related barriers were prominent, with an increase as people move towards the action and maintenance stage. This can cause a possible relapse due to that increase in barrier when you hit the action and maintenance stage. When looking at decisional balance, those in the earlier stages, like pre-contemplation and contemplation of the model, noted less pros and more discomfort cons of exercise compared to those in the later stages. Time and safety barriers were not significantly different between the stages, and this means that those who are beginning to exercise do not see more benefits to cost, causing for continuation of exercise to be lower. Next, we're going to look at intervention research for exercise. The first model we're going to look at is the information, motivation, behavior skills model. This first study we're going to look at was done in 2020 by Kim et al. This study examined the effects of the physical activity promoting program based on the IMB model on physical activity and health outcomes among obese older adults. The adult the older adults in the intervention group participated in 12-week programs involving weekly group sessions and monitoring calls with educational booklets and video clips for exercise dances, and those in the control group just received normal care. For when looking at information, participants were given access to learning material on exercise, specifically the benefits on how to complete them on their own. For knowledge, education on main variables of exercise were given. For behavioral skills, they worked on how to exercise through group sessions. The intervention group at 12 weeks showed significantly greater improvements to self-efficacy for physical activity. Those who were giving information, knowledge, and behavioral skills were more likely to feel like they could reach fitness goals, overall increasing their behavioral change to increased exercise. The next theory we're going to talk about is the social cognitive theory. When looking at potential interventions in 2017, Joseph looked at or focused on African American women's preferences on a tailored activity program. The participants declared an importance to tailoring an intervention to the average African American woman's knowledge and skill level for physical activity, specifically explaining the amount and type of exercise needed to receive health benefits. For behavioral capability, the participants felt that there was needed to be a concrete behavioral target And the answers to their study support the use of social cognitive theory as a foundation to tailored interventions for older African American women. Focusing on each construct specifically for the designated population of social cognitive theory is key to the most effective intervention. So, therefore, using this information that they got from these participants in 2017 and 2020, Joseph made a smartphone-based intervention that relies on social cognitive theory. The development of the app focused on social cognitive theory constructs, specifically behavioral capability, outcome expectation, social supports, self-efficacy, and self-regulation. For the group that completed the 1 month trial, the app delivered, promotional text messages approximately 3 times a week. The creation of the smartphone app increases relevance to the population and decreases the amount of barriers a physical intervention might have. The data shows that the intervention was tailored to African American women and had a positive relationship with the increase of exercise. In my opinion, the most fitting model was the trans-theoretical model. Now, this is kind of an overview would be it goes through the 5 stages of change, which is pre-contemplation, contemplation, preparation, action, and maintenance. And then occasionally there will be a relapse. Now, when you look at exercise, this is the perfect way to explain how someone will go through their exercise journey. They kind of move through the phases. They don't think they need to exercise, and then they decide they need to exercise. They prepare to exercise. They do it. They get healthy. They continue to exercise. But unfortunately, throughout these stages, someone can relapse and go back to a previous stage. I have a proposed intervention for exercise. This is just kind of an example of what I think would be best. Now, I want to use the trans-theoretical model as kind of that backbone. So first, we're going to talk about how to reach out and start that intervention. Now, I think when looking at our focus population of older rural women ages 45 to 70, it is important to reach out through mail and maybe even through cell phone, but since they're in that rural location, mail is best. And also placing promotional pamphlets and flyers around the local businesses. Now, even though it's rural and there's not as many businesses as there would be in urban, they still have to go to the grocery store. They still have to go to doctor's appointments. So if we put those pamphlets on those businesses, then they can see it and they're more likely to respond. Now, once we get enough participants, we'll group them into each stage from pre-contemplation, contemplation, preparation, action, and maintenance. And then there will be specific goals and targets for each stage. When looking at the structure of the intervention, I think there should be a focus on education, support, and organization because these are the highest barriers that the Black community has. And there should be an immediate explanation of the immediate benefits and long-term benefits. Now, when it comes to relapse, I think it will be important to make everyone aware that relapse is normal and is okay. That if someone moves backwards in the trans-theoretical model, that it happens and that they can still move back into that maintenance stage, and that they should continue on focusing on the goal for the specific stage that they're in. Now, for the goals, I think that they should be specific and speedy. And then I think providing additional resources than the program. So, like this infographic. Now, when looking at ethical concerns, the first one would be equipment accessibility. The population we're focusing on has lessened ability to go to a gym or have equipment due to the rural location and income. So, making sure that we provide equipment accessibility to this group during this intervention is practically required in order for it to be successful. Now, in terms of costs, like I stated before, those in a rural environment are more likely to have a lower income. So even though we are thinking about providing equipment or safe locations, we need to make sure that the cost of this intervention is down. Now, for reachability, again, a lot of this is just location based. So since they're in a rural location, word of mouth is not going to work because they just are physically far apart. So, putting pamphlets on the businesses, sending out text messages, sending out mail, just ways for them to have it in their hands and not dependent on a person itself would be important. Now, demographic specific barriers, we need to focus on those. So, like racism, when someone goes to a gym, the Black community is more likely to see racism compared to any other community. So it's important to try to decrease that barrier as much as possible. These are my references, and thank you for listening.